All right, I'm going to call to order the Group Insurance Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 at 4:02 p.m. First order of business, roll call.
Jeff.
Present.
Eric.
Present.
Mike.
Present.
Okay. Rachel.
Present.
Vicky. Not here yet. Diane. Absent. Tony McMillan.
Present.
Tony Moresco.
Present.
Don.
Present.
And Robert. Present. Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Sorry, something was different. Agenda item 2.01, discussion and possible action to select a committee chair for the 2022 calendar year ending December 31st, 2022. From the current membership, Jeff Bozzo, Eric Diamond, Mike Dixon, Rachel Drake, Dawn Echeverry, Diane Lyon, Tony Moresco, Tony McMillan, and Robert Munson. I'll open the floor for discussion. I'm serious. Does anybody like to nominate someone to be in the chair's position?
Like, can we nominate you?
Yeah, I'm on the list.
Well, then I nominate Dawn to maintain the chairmanship of this board.
I second the nomination.
I appreciate it. I have been in the seat for 2 years, so I'm just letting you know I do not mind giving up the seat if anybody would like to do this. All right. Any other nominations?
You're good at it.
Thanks.
Well, if I can ask a question, I mean, Robert, do you have any interest in taking on the chair?
I can do it or I don't need to do it. I'm good either way. She's a looky then.
I am more than willing to do it, but I don't need to do it.
I'll nominate Robert.
I have a nomination. Do I have a second for Robert?
I do. And I don't want to get into anyone's personal business, but I just want to also make sure, too, that, you know, with your nomination, if you didn't have other responsibilities that we should know about, too.
Correct. I think I'm going to say that Robert would be a better nominee right now because there is an election coming up for the state president that I am running for. So I will still probably be serving on the committee, and I'm happy to do anything for this committee, but I'm sure he would, if he was the co-chair, would end up running some of the meetings again. So it might be a good idea for Robert to step up. So I will withdraw my name, if that is okay with the committee. Okay. All right, so we have the nomination for Robert Munson as chair. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Robert Munson will be chairing the rest of today's committee meeting. I'll help you.
Don't you do
Oh, you want me
the
to
vice
do?
chair first?
Fine. I'm trying to give it away, aren't I? Okay. All right. 2.02, discussion and possible action for the selection of the committee vice chair for the 2022 calendar year ending December 31st, 2022. From the current membership, I'm just going to read first names: Jeff, Eric, Mike, Rachel, Dawn, Diane, Tony McMillan, no longer Robert Munson. I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jeff.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
And I'm going to ask the candidate if he accepts the nomination.
I'll accept the nomination for, as a vice chair.
Vice Chair.
Vice
Yeah.
Chair.
All right, thanks.
Awesome. Any other nominations for Vice Chair? Hearing none, I will put the vote before you. All those wishing to vote yes for Jeff Bozzo for Vice Chair of the Insurance Committee, please do so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, and thank you for stepping up. So I'm going to turn the chair over to you.
Okay. Item 2.03, presentation and discussion of the Washoe County School District Group Insurance Internal Service Fund as of December 2021 for information and discussion only.
Jessica Young, Controller. So for the 6 months ending December 31st, 2021, the Internal Service Fund saw revenues of $41.1 million and expenditures of $44.3 million, leaving a deficit of $3.2 million for that period. Some of the highlights are that the medical premiums for the period were down by $1.25 million, or 3.7%, and the medical claims are up by $1.8 million, or 7.5%. So when you look at the decrease in the premiums and you combine that with the increase in the medical claims, it's responsible for over $3 million of the deficit. The prescription claims are also up by $1.5 million, or 19.2%. So what's interesting about the prescription claims is whereas the health insurance claims or the medical claims were up by 7.5% over the prior year, they were actually slightly lower than the year just prior. So they're kind of leveling out to the 2019 levels. In contrast to that, the prescription claims were up by 19.2% over the prior 6 months, and they're up over 26% for the same period in fiscal year 19. So the prescription claims seem to be trending upward. Something that is in these financial statements is the prescription rebates are up by $2.5 million. These rebates include an accrual for the first 2 quarters of $1.4 million. The district hasn't received any rebates for the current fiscal year yet. The difference between the $1.4 million and the total revenues are rebates that came in over and above what we estimated for last year when we made an accrual. So those are the highlights that I wanted to share with you, and I'll try to answer any questions that you have.
Don.
You mentioned that the premiums are down, so we have less people on the plan? I'm trying to understand.
That would be due to the vacancies that we have, because we're just not generating the premiums for those vacant positions.
Okay. Do we know how many we're down on? Because we're up on expenses but down on people. So I was just wondering what the number was. Do you know that?
I don't have the enrollment numbers, but I can certainly get the enrollment numbers for the obviously the enrollment fluctuates every month. And so when you look at enrollment, you have to look at just a period in time. But I could look at the enrollment numbers for December of the 2 years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Item 2.04, presentation and discussion of the Washoe County School District Group Insurance Claims Experience Report as of January 2022. Discussion and information only.
Hello, this is Nate Kerr with LP Insurance. I'm filling in for Lloyd this afternoon. Here to review the monthly claims report for January 2022 for the Washoe County School District Health Plan. Turning to Exhibit 1, the executive summary. As just mentioned earlier, there's some questions. You'll notice in lines 1 through 3 that overall enrollment is down about 1.1% at the employee-only level, and down just shy of 3%, 2.7% for folks with dependents. So, and again, I'm sure as you already know, these are monthly averages. So keeping in mind as we go through today's reports, we're only talking about 1 month, right, January. So keep that in mind from a credibility standpoint. Looking at line 4, net paid claims, so that being after any prescription drug rebates or stop-loss reimbursements taken out. Net paid claims for the month of January was $4.455 million, down about a little over 20% over the prior year monthly average. Keep in mind we only have 1 month, but good month relatively speaking, the overall picture. Line 6, fixed costs. We did have a favorable stop-loss renewal for 1/1/2022. So fixed costs did go down about 6.7%. That's always good. So when we combine the fixed cost and the paid claims, line 7, total plan cost, at least for the month of January, was down about 20%. So a good month, relatively speaking. Dividing that by the overall enrollment, line 8 gives us a composite cost for January at $687 versus $845 for the prior year. So down 18.7. And obviously that composite cost is the best use that we have for measuring how the plan is performing. Okay, and then line 9, large claims. Obviously, we'll get to that exhibit, but large claims for the month of January so far, no one's been identified as violating 50% of the stop loss. So, always good.
It's the first month.
Turning to Exhibit 3, a little bit more detailed breakout of the executive summary we just reviewed. I'll call attention to line 11, the composite cost per employee, the far right. You will notice that employee cost, composite cost is down about 6%. Line 18 for dependents is down about 11.5%. Combining the two, line 31, you'll notice far right, again, composite cost is down about 19.7%. So when looking at those numbers, it's a little interesting. You might wonder how the two smaller numbers equate to a larger number. So I would call your attention to line 26, and you'll notice that in the month of January, plan received quite a large pharmacy rebate of about $900,000. So that obviously made quite an impact. Okay. And then combine it all in, including the fixed costs, which are line 32, 33. We're calling attention to line 35, far right, composite cost for the month of January at $687, as we stated before, versus $845 in the prior year, for an overall 18.7% decrease. So good month. Again, early, but good month. As I understand it, Lloyd doesn't spend too much time on the next few exhibits, so I will skip forward to Exhibit 12. That is the large claims report. We start identifying what we consider large claims at 50% or half of the specific stop-loss deductible, which is $425,000. So obviously we start tracking at $212,500. So that's this first page. So far, none year to date. Always good news. Exhibit 13 is obviously any violations, anything over the 425, and obviously we don't have any there either. And I'll take any questions.
Don Miller.
Can we go back to the second exhibit? The second page, I think is what it is. Sorry. One more.
It's the graph.
I guess Exhibit 3, thank you. It was the second one we talked about. So I want to confirm that the current, when we're looking at our numbers, current year is 1 month, but past year is all 12 months?
Correct. Yeah, we're talking about monthly averages. So are you talking about the two far columns on the right, current year versus prior year?
Right, but is that, it says current year average, that's not, is that January's to January's, both like looking at those months, or is it a full average of all year when we look at current year average?
The current year is only 1 month, so
For last year? What we're comparing
last
it
year is
to?
all 12 months, yeah. What was the average over 12 months the prior year?
Okay,
So the 560, 531, 12
so
months.
that number is really, it's a little bit alarmingly high in my mind, because it's pretty close for a 12 to 1 month averages.
It's just the
Still,
average,
yes.
yeah. Just so you can
Well,
get
and
some
I'm
sort of
trying to
comparison.
put it, because we just heard the financial, which is way off. I mean, we're 3 million in the hole, and so I'm wanting to kind of follow, didn't we just hear that? Yeah, okay. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm on the right page.
Costs have been,
High.
well, quite sporadic over the last, I'm sure you guys have seen over the last couple cycles through COVID. Yes, the prior year running at 845, interestingly enough, is just slightly higher than what 2019 was, because I'm sure you guys already know 2021 took quite a big dip. And then obviously we've seen quite a big increase over the last 4 or 5 months.
And I think, to some extent, what Don might be alluding to is that we have certain months which tend to run higher. And so those are June, July, and August, and spring break and things like that. So we have certain months where teachers are off and tend to do surgeries and employees across the board tend to put stuff off too. So those months tend to run high. So if the average is running close to where we're at, in those higher months, that might drive up our overall costs. So it's
Right,
something-
which is why where I started with January, only 1 month. Obviously, if we were talking in October or November, we might have a little bit better of an indication of how we're doing so far this year. 1 month doesn't really quite give us that so far, but still a good month.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. 2.05, presentation and discussion of the Washoe County School District Insurance Anthem Claims Activity and Turnaround Report as of January 2022. Welcome.
Oh, good afternoon. Pam Davidson from Anthem. So I'm just going to read over the January month because February is not complete at all. January, we received 13,148 claims. Out of that, we had 12,883 processed claims. Within the first 14 days, we had 12,715 processed at 98.7%. Within 30 days, we had 99.93% processed. In 60 days, it was 99.97% processed. Those are the grand totals on this particular one. Out of that 12,883 claims that were processed, we had 11,679 of them processed from the PPO plan and 1,191 processed from the HSA or the high deductible health plan that you have. During the month of January on the RX claims, they are processed at time of service, so that was 7,682 pharmacy claims processed in the month of January. Does anyone have any questions on the turnaround time for medical? Okay, moving on.
Oh, wait, one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yes.
Looking at the spreadsheet, you listed 2020 average. Is that really the 2020
No.
or is that the 2021 average?
No, that is
Or
on the
somewhere
grand
in there.
total one. I noticed that as well. There's, because I don't have the Excel in front of me, it looks like there's an error somewhere in the formulary there. Because if you look down on the PPO total 2020 average, that should be technically 2022. Not, the label is wrong, as well as it has a formula error in that top one where it says grand totals. So if you look down on the PPO totals, on the average, it should be labeled 2022 at the top. But that column is your average for January and February only. Okay, so we'll get that cleaned up for the next month's report, or I can get it revised and resent over to Veronica as well. Okay. But that average one is, yeah, just get rid of that column altogether. So moving on to the dental, that one is labeled correctly on your average. You'll see it says 2022 at the top. But for the January months, there was 1,701 claims. There were 94.22% processed in the first 14 days, with that's 1,569 of those claims. Within 30 days, the final 132 claims were processed and completing it at 100%. Anyone have any questions on the dental portion? Okay. Well, thank you. And Laura, I will get that Excel cleaned up and sent back over to you this week. All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. So, item 2.07, presentation and discussion and possible action to change the Washoe County School District Group Insurance 90-day benefit waiting period for new employees. Are you? Oh, I tell you, there we go. Well, I really want to get to it. No, I'm just kidding. 2.06, presentation and discussion of the Washoe County School District Insurance Wellness Program to report to cover the current events and programs as of January 2022. Information and discussion only. Laura?
Okay. Yeah, Laura Thurston for the record. We have a Spring Step Challenge coming up. It's called Mindful Exploration. It's based on mindfulness, but it has to do with stepping. So we have some exciting rewards that we're offering. The challenge starts March 3rd and ends April 4th. There'll be teams of 5, and you can win based off teams. You can also win based off individual results. So in this challenge, we're offering Pulse Cash. And just a reminder, Pulse Cash is cash that you receive through your Virgin Pulse account in the form of a gift card of your choice in that account, so that those points would be added to your Virgin Pulse account and you'd be able to cash out on your gift card of your choice at that time. So the top teams, you'll see there the amounts that are being offered, first place through 5th place, and as well as top individuals, first place through 5th place. And then anyone who averages 5,000 steps a day earns an additional 500 points in their Virgin Pulse account. Those points, again, go towards their Pulse Cash Bank. That is a tongue twister. And also we did just recently wrap up another week-long challenge of tracking 5 days of mental health to earn 200 points, and we had 168 participants. Thank you. Questions? Yes, Rachel?
Rachel Drake, I'm just noticing under your top individuals, we might be missing a 3rd place.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, that's good. That's a typo. Yeah, they're both like that. So it's $100 for first, $75 for second, third is $50, and then the 4th or 5th is $25.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Laura. Next item, 2.07, presentation and discussion and possible action to change the Washoe County School District Group Insurance 90-day benefit waiting period for new employees for possible action. Emily, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I don't necessarily have a presentation, but Laura invited me to participate in the discussion,
Okay.
so I'm excited to do that.
So if I could just refresh everyone, I did get a couple, I think, similar questions in that the committee ended with in our last discussion of exploring the 90-day wait change. The committee asked, and I think we had a couple individual questions on what would be a realistic time frame in order for staff to meet a change. And then I believe there was also a question of what does it look like from HR's perspective of recruitment and retainment and that. So we'll try to address those questions, and if anything else comes forward, let us know. And I know Emily will address those too, but in terms of the staff in a realistic time frame, I guess that probably depends on a number of things, what type of wait time we're looking for, one, but I truly feel currently with our staff that we have now and our processes that we have now, we would not be able to make a change that would be very efficient currently for our new hires. So I think what we would be looking at is some of the processes we talked about in the last meeting. For example, potentially a new hire portal that we're seeing. Once we get through that, and we get through the testing phase, and we actually get through the adoption, and we get through a good portion of new hires, I would be able to hopefully have a better sense of what kind of time frame or even what kind of spread could we go to? Could we go to a 60-day? Could we go to a 30-day? We'd have a better grasp then. So I don't know if it's exactly the answer you're looking for, but I feel like after our new hire session for the new year, which would be more like when we see processing, that's like November timeframe generally, we would be able to better assess that question, if that makes any sense, because I'm hoping, and I don't know, because I don't know how it's going to work out, I'm hoping that the new hire portal is going to be fantastic and it's going to create a lot of new efficiencies, and we can see that. Maybe we'll have different processes within our teams as well. But right now, there's no way to gauge that actual time frame until we go through that actual experience.
Yeah, I think I would just offer some perspective. Laura updated me after the last meeting, and we talked about the recruiting benefit and the potential for impact to retention and that sort of thing. And I would say first, I am in favor of lessening the wait period if we have the opportunity to do so, because I think that when you are looking for a new job, right, you're looking at the total package, and all things being equal, if one has a wait period and one doesn't, that certainly could influence someone's decision. And Laura will tell you too, probably sometimes to my own detriment, I'm excited about implementing new things and changing, for the benefit of employees. So please don't hear that we don't want to do this. I think at least my concerns lie really in the infrastructure to make it happen effectively. So I don't know if Laura shared with you, but Business Plus, the system that we use for our HR system, underwent an upgrade, 3 months ago? Something like that. We use the term upgrade loosely. And Laura's team has been particularly impacted. So when they're doing enrollments, right, the packages that are available keep disappearing. And then we spend 2 or 3 days trying to troubleshoot where they went and were all the enrollments that we did this week processed correctly. So one of the things that we're dealing with, right, is old technology, antiquated and inefficient processes built around that old technology, paper enrollments, and then of course people, right? And so the benefits team is affected by all of those things. So those are some of my concerns. I think we want to work with the business office to be able to quantify what the impact would be. I know that when I think about trying to anticipate that, it's very difficult obviously to predict claims activity. But I'd want to work with each of the associations too to make sure that our leave policies made sense with that kind of a change. So that's one other thing to think about. Right now we have some really, really generous leave policies, and I'd hate to have a situation where somebody started worked one day, went out on leave the second day, they've got our benefits, right, and now we've got something kind of catastrophic happening. So I think not only do we have to work at this level to figure out if that change makes sense, but then we'll need to work with each of the associations to make sure that language around leaves and waiver of premium is not negotiated as part of the plan document, but just making sure that everyone was comfortable with those structures too, so that we didn't have any unintended consequences. So happy to answer any questions. Or
do we know what other districts around Story County or Carson, what other districts are doing or have done in the state?
So not off the top of my head, but I bet Dawn knows.
Don Echeverry?
I was going to suggest saying things that we look at, talk to the other HR directors from those. I'm pretty sure Carson starts day one.
Probably.
Yeah.
They probably don't have 400 new hires a year, right?
No, but they have,
economies of scale.
I attend those, they're pretty big. I'm just, when we look at comparable where salaries are compared to those districts that have insurance, we want to be more comparable, and we're not there salary-wise, so we were hoping
Yeah.
to look at other things, as Herc can tell you, from the police status too, what they're just going through, right? Yeah, so it was just one of those, and how do they process them in one day, would be my question. I don't know what Clark, I do not believe has a long turnaround either.
Probably not. I think they have a lot of infrastructure, though, too, around their enrollment process. And so we are largely a paper enrollment process at this point. And so I think the logistics of that and having an electronic system in place are super crucial to being able to shorten that window at all.
So this is Laura Thurston for the record. I have a small amount around that. We tried to gather as much as we could around public entities, and I have some school districts within that. Clark County starts the first day of the month following hire. They have 30 days to enroll. No paper forms are accepted. Everything's done online, including a self-paced orientation. So we're not there in terms of the paper portion yet, and that also means training some of our employees too I don't even know if training is the word, being able to provide that support, right, for them to go online and to be able to do that. And where are we finding that support? So that's Clark County. Truckee School District, which I imagine they're small. I don't know a lot about them. Enrollment has to be applied within 31 days of first becoming eligible for coverage. We don't have a date on that. Otherwise, Washoe County, 90 days. City of Reno is 91st day. City of Sparks is first day of the month following hire. State of Nevada is first day of the month following hire. Endow Forestry BLM is 90 days after hire. NV Energy is 90 days. UNR is coverage begins on the first day of the first full month of employment. Enrollment must take place within 15 days of the start date. The only one that we found, I think, effective immediately was the airport. I don't know how they do that. I need to talk with them. Yeah.
I don't have my microphone on. Sorry, Emily Ellison for the record. We certainly can reach out to our friends in Story and Carson and Lyon too, just to get some comparative information.
Rachel?
So, Rachel Drake, and my question then is, we had some very vague discussion about what our current processes are and what our current numbers look like. Can we get some more specifics? Because we know that our biggest hiring spot there is in August. And how long does it take us with our current systems and our current setup, which doesn't include the last update, to process our July and August hires? So, do we get 95% in 60 days? Or are we not even close to that?
So I'm sure these guys could speak in terms of their experience. What I will say is that I think something a lot of people don't realize is just how manual things are at the district office, right? And so even being able to collect that data would be a manual process, I believe. And so then we're like logging forms to say, okay, here's everybody we hired, here's how many we had at 30, here's how many we had at 60, here's how many we had at 90, because the system does not produce analytics in that way. So I think we could probably give you some anecdotal data, and maybe we have a spreadsheet. I mean, you guys have a lot of spreadsheets, so they could already be tracking that, but I will tell you, getting data out of the system is a major pain point for me.
Yeah, Emily's exactly correct there. I can go back and look. I do have a spreadsheet on maybe how many new hires we had around that time frame. But that was manually put together. And I don't think that I don't think there's any way to look to see when Veronica and our other tech actually would process those. That time period is also during our open enrollment period. So it's a pretty heavy time frame in terms of processing anything. Veronica, do you want to speak to that? Do you have any idea? If not, we can go back and look and see if we can gather more data on that.
So your goal, just to make sure I understand too, your goal is to try and understand how quickly people are turning around their paperwork in the current system. Okay.
And the reason I'm asking that is because what I'm hearing is that we're stuck with our current system for at least some little time. Right? We are in the process of revising it. More updates are coming, those sorts of things. But at least knowing what we're currently accomplishing gives us a starting point for what modifications might be realistically considered given our current constraints.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that we would be hitting the majority of 60 days. And part of that is getting that information back from the employee.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Eric Diamond.
Well, I know that during our last discussion, the board was pretty confident in the financial portion of it, where we're going to potentially see a financial concern that we should be cognizant of. And I'm pretty sure we're clear of that because I haven't heard anything different from our last discussion on it. I think that it's an incredible tool that we can offer as a package for recruiting that I think we're seeing district-wide is an issue. The only thing that I question, and I totally understand paper systems, manning, staffing for processing large numbers of people, but is there any kind of issue with, let's just say we went with a 30-day situation, which I think most of us were pretty comfortable talking about. Is there an issue with having those things backlogged even though everything is signed? So for instance, I become a new employee in August, everything is signed and dated correctly, just not entered correctly, and then I suddenly have an issue. Is that person really not covered? Or is there an ability to say this person actually is covered, just wasn't entered yet? Is there really so much, not best practice, but is there really a problem with that situation?
Yeah. Yeah, I would want to think through it thoroughly before I would give you a 100% answer. But that's exactly it. So if I have benefits on day one and I don't have anything entered into Anthem, right? Anthem doesn't see me as a member. I go to a provider, even if they're a provider of Anthem, and the provider says, you don't have insurance, you're going to have to pay out of pocket. So it's more of an inconvenience to the member than anything, yeah.
No, like I said, I totally understand that, and it's not a best practice to sit there and
Right.
say, well, you're an insured member, just go and we'll reimburse. That's not a good practice. I
Right.
totally get that. At the same time, it's not something I think couldn't be worked out over time to say, okay, you're absolutely correct. Actually, this should have been rebuilt or do a rebill over time to allow that process to take place. I just don't see stopping that idea based on the idea that it may just not be entered into a program. Again, not best practice, and I'm not
Right.
saying that we should absolutely force this down and make it happen, but I think that there's just enough of a degree, there's a degree of a problem that if this is feasible, we can do as long as there's a fix that we can live with. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'd have to take that back to Anthem too to get their perspective on that. So they hold their claim processing pretty tightly because, of course, that's a process for them, and the more claims that they have to reprocess, the more money that costs them, et cetera, and time frame. So I have to see, like, in their eyes, what does that look like? Would there be a allowable percentage of people that we could do that with, or I'd ask them that question.
I think too that we should look at the agreement because I seem to remember at least one of the vendors had a reprocessing fee when we were going through the proposal process. So I don't remember if it was Anthem or not, but I want to make sure there wasn't.
It could be because they might even say we're not even reprocessing it at all. They don't have to reprocess it. So that's the other thing we just want to make sure and clarify. I can ask them that.
And so it sounds like, we're really antiquated with our technology. Is there any future idea that the district's going to do an RFP or something for some kind of new technology to handle these types of processes? And then,
I deeply, deeply hope so. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, absolutely. So the system that we have now, I think we've had for 20 or so years.
Sassy.
And it's very customized to our district. But I'm sure you can imagine the angst that it also creates for me making that kind of a change too, just because of the volume of data that's there. So that'll be a process that happens over a period of time. But we have slated it in the capital improvement project, the CIP plan, capital improvement plan. I don't know why I'm looking at Jeff. Tony knows. Because yes, at this point, the system is so antiquated that we really do need to take another look at it.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
If the big barrier is our system, right, and we're all talking about moving to the electronic enrollment process, is it possible that that just went through a third party? Like, could the insurance company be responsible for all of our enrollment work, and it's just they're the ones that host the website? Therefore, the workload is moved away from the team?
I like outsourcing. It's a fair question. I think we'd have to think through it just because the enrollment process is more than just the Anthem piece, right? They have life insurance and other things too. So I think we'd have to look at that, but it's a fair question. Is there a way that we could accelerate the timeline by utilizing someone else's technology?
Yeah, I think it would be using somebody else's fingers. I think so. It would probably be looking at some type of per member per month type of a cost, I'm guessing, or some other additional administrative fee from Anthem, but I can ask that question of Anthem as well to see. But yeah, we have other things we process. We would still have to process into Business Plus as well because that connects to payroll and paychecks. And that would obviously be internal. I don't know how much external we could look at, but something to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Rachel.
point of clarification then. What I'm understanding then is there are pieces that are tied into insurance eligibility that would have to be processed in-house that could not be processed outside. Is that correct?
I don't,
Or could
my
they be
answer is,
separated?
I don't know. I don't know how the district would feel about an outside entity processing an internal software, our Business Plus software, So I guess my answer is, I don't know. I haven't had that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next question then, because we do have amongst this committee a general support for reducing the time period, what steps do we need next? We've established some data that would be useful. Whether or not we can get our hands on it, we're not sure. And, but we also need to confirm a reduction of enrollment time for new members and figure out how we can possibly swing that. What else needs to be addressed before we can consider a reduction?
In my mind, the electronic enrollment portal is a critical piece, and we want to make sure that with the 90-day window, we're able to leverage that to then start reducing from there. And I also have, through the budget process, submitted request for additional personnel. Aside from this ask, we need additional personnel in the department anyway. But in my mind, people and the systems infrastructure are sort of the two main kind of need to come next items.
Go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to add, I think we need to think through the support that we would offer some of our employees in terms of actually enrolling online. I think that is going to be a barrier for some of our employees. So do we consider still offering them paper? And then if there is paper, what does that look like? Or what kind of support can we offer the custodian who doesn't have access to online enrollment or something like that?
Well, I know when we're doing the health evaluation things and stuff like that in the past, we used to use Matley Center and, would hold, some of those. So it might be possible to, hold a get-together type of thing where people can come in and do that and have that support, have somebody there that can support them and help them go through the process. My question is, would it be feasible, even with the current system, because the majority of our hires are in the fall, right? July and August, right? And then we start to see, yeah, that's true. You start to see that sort of taper off a little bit, hopefully throughout the year. Would it be something that if we did this in increments, like say 60 days next year, and then the year after go to 30 days, and then we can reevaluate whether we want to go to, I definitely see some concerns with the day, the next day type of thing, simply because I know how our leaves work, and I know that could be something, somebody could be off most of the year with insurance benefits. But I would say that, reducing that, say, over the course of 2 years down from 60 to 30, or, something like that, would that even 60 days be feasible for a large majority right now with what we have?
So I think that's kind of what Laura and I are saying. We know that replacing Business Plus is a 3 to 5 year project. We want to get the electronic enrollment portal in place and make sure that's working so that then we can make incremental reductions if it makes sense, with the business office. So I think I meant to comment a little bit earlier. I know that you all talked about premiums and that sort of thing, but there still is a bit of an unknown, right, in terms of how much utilization we would have in that 90 days. And so we would want to work closely, I think, with our partners at LP and maybe looking at other school districts that do this sort of immediate enrollment to try and anticipate what claims activity might look like during that time too. So I think what you're saying is exactly what Laura and I are thinking too. If we can get that system in place and then reap the benefits of the efficiencies of that system in our current 90-day program, then we can start to incrementally reduce from there without having to wait 3 to 5 years for a Business Plus upgrade.
Eric Diamond in the top?
So I don't do much HR work at all. And I have one of the smallest associations around, so we don't hire very often, nor do we lose very often. And I'm hearing that there's more of this kind of teacher situation, I think, that comes on. What is your big period, your big busy time, so to speak? If this were to come down to a 30-day, which I think a lot of us were talking about, if this were to come down to a 30-day, what is your busiest time frame or big hurdle that you might meet manning or staffing wise? When does that occur?
So we used to have seasons. I hope we go back to having seasons. It used to be certified, right? Lots of hiring in June, July, August timeframe. Starts to taper off a little bit from there. We stop hiring for certified in February because then we start the game of musical chairs for overage and allocations. That's probably still pretty typical for certified. I mean, we do have a bit of an influx in the December, January timeframe with new graduates who might get picked up into contract positions, but certified is generally that June, July, August timeframe. ESP hiring is consistent throughout the year now. I think we used to experience more of a season, but we have hundreds of jobs open right now, and so the recruiting activity doesn't let up, and the hiring activity doesn't let up on the ESP side. I'm actually really glad that you asked about that too, because one of the other things that we have on the HR side that makes things more complicated for the benefits techs is we have 2 different payroll cycles. And so ESPs are paid every 2 weeks or twice a month? Twice a month. And everybody else is paid once a month. And so our HR techs are always processing new hire paperwork for the next payroll cycle because they're always getting it in before the next payroll cycle. And so the timing of information moving from employee services to the benefits team will be impacted by that too, right? So we are worried about getting into a situation where new hire starts, certified new hire, if we say benefits are effective on day one or the first day of the following month, the HR technicians might be in the ESP payroll cycle and entering all the new hires for ESPs, but miss that timeline for certified, if that makes sense. So anyway, there's a lot of logistics in terms of hiring cycles, but ESP and non-certified positions are fairly steady throughout the year now.
And is that, well, during your busy period, is that several hundred that you're seeing at a time? Or, I mean, how is it that you all are making it during your busiest periods? I mean, are you reallocating people or?
Yeah, so we have, not on the benefits side, on the HR technician side, we have a number of folks who have been trained in the employee services processes who do other types of jobs. So, for example, our licensing technician plays a little bit of double duty during that time as well. Our supervisory staff are all trained in those processes too. And so that influx period, we absolutely need to rely on other staff members.
Okay. Well, yeah, and the basis of my question is because the last thing that I want to do is, crush any of our internal departments and say, oh, well, have fun with the processing. At the same time, I think the board or the panel is pretty moved into trying something new to help out with some different issues that we're seeing in different areas. And so I just want to make sure that, should we decide that something like this happens, that you have an ability at least to keep up.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we're probing so carefully and making sure that we're asking all the questions, because the last thing I want to do is increase anyone's workload unnecessarily or unduly. At the same time, with what's being proposed, I think it's just something that we really seriously have to consider.
Yeah, and I don't disagree, right? I think as a part of the total employment package, we want to be as competitive as we can be. And I'll say, I mean, our concerns are definitely rooted in resources, not only technology resources, but people resources. We're also deeply concerned about the member experience. So even if we're able to kind of keep heads above water and our teams are okay, I think there's more of a risk for a bad member experience if we miss the mark and we don't do it well, and then now we have a brand new hire who goes to the doctor and has to pay out of pocket, and you know what I mean? So that we just want to make sure too that both sides of the equation we're adequately prepared to handle both sides, if that makes sense.
Go ahead.
Thanks. So Emily and Laura, just to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly, the first step would be the implementation of the employee portal, and then review, see how that goes, and see what kind of reduction we can make to the waiting day period.
Also, we need additional staff.
Okay.
Business. I know.
And then
Rachel needs additional staff too.
So from there, depending on what that recommendation is, you would work with business to see if there's any financial impact, and then work with the associations, implement whatever that change is, and then continuously evaluate it for any other efficiencies that are created down the line.
It sounds about right.
Okay. So then, sorry. My next question would be, do we need to provide an action to look into that, or is it just no action?
Well, I think the agenda item doesn't speak to the things that we need to do, right? So in terms of taking action on the portal, for example, I don't think there's opportunity to do that based on the way the agenda is written. I don't know. I mean, I think there's some downside to taking an action and setting an expectation when we're all still a little bit unclear on timing, right? Because I think that sends a message to employees who then don't hear the whole message and go, oh, cool, benefits are effective the first day now, right? So I would want to be cautious and intentional about when we were making those decisions so that the associated employee communication isn't. I would hate to have this turn into a bad thing, right? Because of miscommunication and that sort of thing. I'd rather us be really thoughtful and really intentional about how we're doing it and how we roll it out so that we get the full bang for our buck versus misinformation because of actions that were taken, now when we know we're not going to be able to do this for several months. So that's
Thank
what I
you.
would say.
Don?
So first, I'm going to thank you for calling or checking with people. I think we need to continue. I think our action is that this is going to be on our agenda monthly so that we're gathering our data. Because if we let it sit, I worry that it becomes, we'll get back to that. So maybe that's our action at first, that this will be a monthly conversation where we're continuing to work through our processes. And I would like the action to be that we continue to reach out to other counties and get how do they process. You said Clark is the first of the month, and I then recalled they do their new hire, go through their school boards, the first meeting of the school board trustees, so they're 2 a month board meetings. I think anybody who's going to be approved by the board first month, and so they become active the month after that, the start of the following month. So an employee may end up being hired for 45 days before they get it. Because it's the start of the month following their approval by the board.
I'm surprised they still do that board action thing.
Oh, yeah. That's how I get my list of who's not with the district. It's on their website. Right? It's an agenda item.
Yeah.
But so it'd be nice to know how they kind of work through their process, because it's not just the first. It could be someone who came in and they have to wait a month and a half to get insurance. So continuing to get data from other districts, I think, is a really good outreach for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as I said last month, when I first got hired, I worked at my job at Rayleigh's for almost 3 months. I finally figured I can go 2 weeks without insurance. I just can't keep working 2 jobs. But I kept 2 jobs mainly because of insurance. And I was young, and there were no health issues to worry about. Whereas I think a lot of people who are older coming in as a second career or have families and kids, they don't want their kids to be without insurance for 90 days. So they end up either working 2 jobs or going somewhere else or doing something else. And I think that COBRA is just ridiculously priced.
Yeah.
And most people know that if you have something catastrophic, you have time to put in the COBRA. You can do it sort of retroactively because you have so many days to sign up, so much time to sign up. But even so, I think, going to a 30-day cycle, 60, 30-day, and working our way down, having the next day is, I think, a little bit difficult, but from 90 days to 60 or 30 days is certainly, I think, doable in the foreseeable future. We just need to figure out how to do it.
Yeah. I think the action that Don suggested makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Tony?
Tony McMillan. We talk about 60 and 30 and scaling down. I think it's important to know what are we actually meeting now at maybe a 95% level or something. Because if that's 75 days and we can meet 75 days and we implement that possibly for just even this year and then next year, because if we're meeting it, it does something. And I know that's not a lot of time, but 2 weeks is 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that would be, something to look at. I think something that would be important, but it comes with data, I guess, from risk and HR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2 weeks would have meant that I had a teacher that I sent to the Hawk Clinic because they didn't have insurance, and that was November 1st, and their insurance didn't kick in for 5 more days, and that would have meant they would have been covered.
Eric.
My final part of the discussion here is, it says for possible action here, and I think that's what's been brought to this panel's attention is the fact that we can take action on this. I don't have a problem with taking more data and cautiously seeking all the information that we need. So the idea, the concept of monitoring this or looking down the road is fine. I just would caution against kicking the can too long, only because we know what our concerns and issues are, in that if we have a staffing shortfall or if we have an antiquated system, we either wait the 3 to 5 years for the antiquated system to be corrected, or for HR to hire on other persons or something else, to assist in what we're seeking. So just a degree of caution on that we could, absolutely take more data and see what we can, adequately meet. We don't want to overpromise. At the same time, I think that this is brought to our attention for action, and if this is something that we as a panel feel is something that we need, then we should absolutely take that action.
I do want to clarify that the next step is not dependent on the new ERP system. It's not dependent on replacing Business Plus in 3 to 5 years. The electronic enrollment portal is something that you are already working on and will hopefully interface with Business Plus. So in terms of the time frame, I don't think we'd be looking at having it on the agenda for 3 to 5 years. I just want to make sure nobody takes that away.
And I think it'd be nice if we could make some kind of decision, start for the next cycle, for next school year, at some point, be able to do that. But, but we'll have to look at what we can do. Done.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this, Eric. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion. We'll see if we can take an action. Amy's like, no. I move.
I want to make sure it doesn't turn into a bad thing.
No. You
know how
I move
things
that
get
the
misconstrued.
Insurance committee continue to meet monthly and research the 90-day period for insurance, with first steps being part of next year's packet.
What do you mean?
So when we talk next year school year, so when we were talking, we'll be talking probably starting in April or May about budgeting for this committee, and if we're going to have to do any premiums or that this should be part of that discussion that we present to the board.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
So that gives us kind of a date for our first action item on it.
Word it again. Say it again.
My wording's bad. I'm trying to work that out. That the insurance committee works monthly on the 90-day insurance grace period, taking its first action, I'll say July. Or I said as part of the
meetings sometimes in June.
I said as part of the insurance packet for next year.
Is that the packet for 23?
It's when we'd have to decide when we'd have to decide the premiums and everything. Yes. Because that could be any time during the summer. We could be working on that.
Any discussion, or we need a second before we get a discussion.
I'd like to clarify the motion if we can. So you're asking that we take action on this by what date exactly?
Sorry, clarification. We never know what date we will know the premium packet. That's a discussion in the middle of summer. Sometimes we're done in April and we take it to the board. Sometimes we're not done until July and we take it to the board. I just think it should be part of that presentation to the board.
So it's having it on the agenda monthly with the goal of including change recommendations in the next board action related to rates.
Mm-hmm. And my only question, so that we're all sort of on the same page, yes, we're looking at rates. Those rates kick in January, but we're looking at the adoption of the waiting period with the new hire cycle for the 22-23 school year.
Correct.
Okay, so, because I just wanted to clarify that, because if we're looking at January, then we're saying that's after that whole cycle of hiring. So even though we're pairing those together in our discussions, I think that what we want to do is see if there's any way we can do reductions, whether it's systematically or, in chunks to the next school year possibly. but you want it on the discussion item
Every month.
so that we're getting more information and bringing this up.
So I think it's good that we're going to talk about it monthly. I want to caution that the next school year feels far away, but it's not, right? And so I think it's end of April that we actually start hiring for certified, maybe beginning of May. So I think as we provide additional updates, that may shape the timeline in making those incremental adjustments. So.
I guess my reason for putting it part of the conversation for, like, when we present to the board, whatever we're going to bring in front of the board, a 2%, a 0%, whatever, is that gives us not kicking it down the road. It's kind of, even if it's, we go to the board and we say, here's the data and we need staffing to do this, and this is where we think the recruitment's going to help, and this is what we're making our recommendation to be. I think that's why I wanted to be part of that package, but that deadline moves on us because of knowing rate increases. So
I think that makes a lot of sense because the type of analysis that we need to do for rates or for plan design changes or for this is a plan design change, right? You'd want to include that in that conversation. So that makes sense to me.
Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I just processing all that, listening to you. My fiance actually today is just transitioning jobs at Renown and coincidentally just texted me that she did her onboarding today for benefits, all electronic, starts the first day after the full month of employment, what you just shared, right? As a few of your examples. So just listening to you talk right now, if we talk about how we're going to really get into hiring season, going back a couple of your points, if you're hired in April, May, June, you're not completing your first full month of work until August to September. So in theory, couldn't we just, out the gate, even kind of going back to your point with looking at the actual days, if we said something that if you're hired by August 1 or whatever the cutoff date would work appropriately for your teams, in theory with our current systems, you could be benefited pretty close to the first pay period, right? Can you kind of see where I'm going with that?
I do.
But there'd have to be a cutoff.
Yeah, potentially.
Right? But maybe that could be an incentive. Sign a letter of intent between now and July, or even June 31st, because our fiscal year, our contracts are July 1, right?
Administrators are, but certified are August.
I knew that last time. I got corrected in
I'm
here.
sorry. Most certified are August. There are still a handful of grandfathered contracts from multi-track that are July. I think we're down to about 600, though. A handful. Just a handful.
Yeah.
And with the processing time, I mean, obviously they're paying the people who start August and they're teaching, so they're getting their first check. So obviously they're entering that part of the business. Now you said they have to then transfer it over to the other part, risk management, to put in the second part of that. But I mean, if people are getting paychecks, they're obviously in the system. It's just a matter of getting them in all the systems.
Yeah.
I think the key phrasing is first day after the first full month
of work,
at least for our licensed contracted positions.
I think just as a brief point of order, she still has a motion on the floor.
Sorry, we're discussing the motion. Okay,
I don't think I had a second, though.
we're still waiting for the second.
Because it was so convoluted, and I get it. But I do want us to have a deadline and something we take to the board when we do come from this committee for that presentation. So that's my deadline.
Do we have a second?
It's okay.
He wants to hear it again.
Oh, you want to hear it again? I move that the insurance committee meets monthly on the 90-day insurance grace period, presenting its first steps to the board when we present the insurance package. Because if we do any premium changes or we do any plan changes, we would present them to the board.
Everyone keeps looking at me, but I don't get to vote, so.
Right.
I'll second that motion. I do think that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, any discussion? Go ahead, Eric.
As far as the motion goes, would you be willing to amend that to ensure that it remains an item for discussion, presentation, discussion, and possible action? Can we ensure that that remains in that fashion?
That's what I meant by it, so, yes.
Very good. Then, yeah, I'm ready for a vote on that unless anyone else has any other comments on it.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Okay, motion passed. Okay. Item 2.08. The approval of the minutes of the January 26, 2022 meeting of the Group Insurance Committee. Those were sent out to you yesterday, I believe. And Tony,
I was present at the last meeting. Diane Lyon was not.
yeah, it says on here that Tony Maresco was absent, but in fact, she came into the meeting a few minutes into the meeting, but she was here. So we can change that, right? Okay. Any other changes, additions, deletions?
She wasn't present for roll call.
Right,
Right.
but then she came in and I noted it on the roll call sheet.
Yeah, it's noted in the minutes.
Oh,
It's,
okay,
she arrived, I believe, sorry, I'll pull them up.
okay. Okay,
It's listed under item 2.02. She arrived during the meeting at 4:07.
awesome. Okay,
Jeff Balzo, I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second Dawn Echeverry.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the January 26, 2022 meeting. All in, is there any we don't need to discuss. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, motion passed. I forgot I moved the minutes on. Okay. Okay, item 3.01, public comment. Is there any public comment? No public comment. Okay, 3.02, announcement of next meeting on March 30th, 2022, 4 p.m. here at the board room, I assume. Okay, and 3.03, meeting is adjourned.